Episode 10 is titled Beyond the Sadness. We mourn the loss of Rachel's legs, Ho and Serena leaving the main group. I really enjoyed it, in spite of all the dialogue cuts, because, well, we're bound to be flying through these chapters at this point. Chapters 52 to 58 were adapted in this episode, a total of 7 chapters. I gotta put my disclaimer that the goal of this video is to see what was actually cut, what was enhanced with additions, and what sorts of potential impacts it has for world building and storytelling for this series. It's obvious that things have to be cut for an adaptation, but this is less of a negative critique and more of what effects these cuts/changes have. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos every week. Now, let's begin. We get some anime-only stuff where Rock calls attention to the main cast about Ghost disappearing, which of course makes sense since a regular just disappearing or vanishing is big deal. We even get some change in the final selection process that Ghost actually fails the second floor. It's kind of strange that Leraro is not concerned or confused that one of his testing students is gone. We also get the little bit apart from chapter 51 where we see Yuri. Even though we got most of that scene from the webtoon into the anime, the part where Yuri talks about how she knows that they're taking the long way to avoid Evanco, I felt was a little important because it shows that the team that Yuri is part of is afraid of the head administrator whose name has been dropped multiple times in the anime now. Instead, Yuri continues to act cocky about hurrying up to get to the floor itself fast. Chapter 52 starts with the announcement about the hide-and-seek results, saying that it will be announced later in the evening, and then ends with Rock and Kun talking about Bomb. Before we get to chapter 52, one of the flashback scenes we get at the beginning of this episode and technically at the end of last episode was Rachel and Ho getting taken out of the testing area in stretchers. In the webtoon, people, the species that was carrying them is the helpers that were helping Yellow, who was the test guide to Han Sung-yu's door test, which was the second test of floor 2. In the anime, it's the Dian clan here. Since the species with Yellow was never really mentioned or shown in the anime, it works out that they replaced him with the Dian. So instead of the announcement by Leraro that the results will happen late in the evening, in the webtoon, Leraro talks about how they don't need to pay money anymore for food and whatnot before the final test. We get some of the eating at the table scene, but the webtoon feels like it has more tension, especially between Androsi and Kun. When Kun says you ruined everything to Androsi for not keeping her end of stopping Bomb from meeting Rachel. We also lose the part where Shibusu and Kun are alone in the webtoon, and Shibusu says it's okay about what happened to Test A losing and not carry that burden, which I guess is fine that this was cut because we already had this conversation at the end of Team A losing itself. I thought the idea of showing us the flashback of Kun's plan while Kun was lying in bed after the meeting or after the eating was good, but the actual flashback was terrible. I'll get into the flashback when we cover chapter 55 because that's when it's the flashback or Kun's plan is actually covered in the webtoon itself. I really like in the anime that Kun knew exactly who was banging on the door instead of the side panel shot, and instead of the side panel shot of Kun bending over in the webtoon, we have this frontal shot more, which is nice. I just realized the inconsistency of the webtoon when Rock actually bumps into Han Sung-yu. Han Sung-yu had his hair down and completely different clothes and then all of a sudden got fully dressed up. Like what? The flashes between the transitions were alright. It didn't feel like the time jumps like with Onyx flashback with her mother at least, so it's okay. I don't know if it's important to add this part from the webtoon, but we have this restriction or this kind of rule saying that to change the size of a living thing you need to get permission, and technically Han Sung-yu didn't ask Rock's permission to shrink him. The banana scene from the webtoon also doesn't make too much sense here in the anime since Rock's obsession is with chocolate bars, so it was fine that it was cut out. Chapter 53 starts with Rock and Kun's conversation and ends with Bomb telling them that he wants to climb with Rachel. Although I don't really like the transition to Kun's backstory in the webtoon, like the transition didn't really make sense, but the scene itself was really important because it's a rare scene where it's just Kun and Rock talking to each other. We learn about how both handle problems. Kun thought Maria was special and different from the rest and put her place next to the king, but something was missing from him itself. Kun thinks that that's why he ended up in the tower, and by seeing Bomb and Rachel, he wanted to make sure he found his thing before Bomb inevitably leaves Kun for her. Rock counters this by saying that he's missing the big point here. Rock in Kun's position would kill the king and make himself the king so that the person sitting next to him is his choice. And then instead in the anime, we just get a knock for Bomb to walk in after Kun says that he can't enlarge Rock. It's a shame that we lost this bit of characterization. The change to Bomb saying that Rachel will never make a full recovery is good, because I think that this would be more believable for Bomb to just hear whatever lie the doctor, who probably works for the FUG, tells him. I really enjoy the Maria scene being interlaced with Bomb's declaration of climbing for Rachel. Although we don't get the line where Kun says, Bomb, you must keep getting stronger, not to chase after Rachel, but to go up the tower alongside her. We did get something similar to this when Bomb first wakes up and has food with Kun after the crown game. So this is already covered about getting strong enough so Rachel won't reject him. Chapter 54 starts with Shibusu and Serena's conversation and ends with Han Sang-yu talking to Yuga. We lost a bit about Serena complaining to Shibusu about being weak and understanding why Ho hated Bomb because of how driven and talented Bomb is. In the webtoon, we have this section of Bomb trying to persuade people to go up with him and Rachel. And although this is fine, the anime, kills this entire conversation by giving Ho a proper burial. Although we don't get this scene in the anime or in the webtoon until chapter 59, we only got a few panels of them standing in front of Ho, and Serena pours some liquor. Rachel doesn't even join as she watches from the window, and that's it. In the anime though, we have Bomb reach out to Serena and others to meet at the funeral because Bomb wanted to give a proper send-off to his friend, Ho. Shibusu throws some milk and says to say some to Ho, which was really sweet. Rachel is actually here in the webtoon, Rachel is actually here in her wheelchair, and we even have Kwan and Leirero also present to pay their respects. This is wonderfully done, as we get a nice follow-up of everyone around the table afterwards, toasting to Ho. Instead of Androsi and a Bomb scene, like in the webtoon, we get an anime-only scene for Bomb and Rachel. This Bomb and Rachel scene was really good, and it probably threw off a lot of anime onlys of what Rachel is about to do at the end of the season. Rachel sobbing and crying might be that she genuinely regrets the decision she made and that she abandoned Bomb, but she damn well will do it again for the sake of her dream. She flat out told Bomb that he was in her way and that she isn't the same Rachel that Bomb loves, which is awesome foreshadowing. I don't know if it's considered foreshadowing because she flat out says it. But this is the, kind of straightforward things that Rachel says and will continue to say in the future. And over everything, Bomb forgives her and is willing to stay by her side, no matter what, which is sweet and sad to see. Androsi and Bomb's scene in the webtoon was also important because it further reinforces Androsi's connection with Bomb. Bomb was the only one who reached out to her in the webtoon when she got injured. When Bomb was lonely, he told Androsi that Rachel was the only person who came to him from the light. So when Bomb was at his lowest, she was there for him. He will do anything to repay her for being that anchor to his world. I think it still holds true that to Bomb in the webtoon currently, that no one can really replace Rachel, no matter what hell she put him through. I thought it was sweet and cute to see everyone drunk, especially Hot. We even get a really nice send-off of Lauro thanking Serena for dragging him to safety in the second round of Crown Game. This is of course because Lauro probably knows that Serena is leaving, and the final send-off, Serena gives Shibusu her sword, which is anime only. Serena says that her life is full of regrets and that she's lucky that she survived. She doesn't want to continue to step on her friends to keep climbing the tower, so she decides to leave. The send-off was really well done, and all the characterizations of the interactions with Serena this episode were handled amazingly. The cave where Ren is, of course, beautifully detailed backgrounds that the studio has consistently given us. We get a little bit of maybe miscommunication or mistranslation, as Ren in the anime says to the pocket that he will pass, while the webtoon, Ren talks about the two princesses passing first. The boy is mentioned later in the webtoon, and Ren says that he has talent to receive the symbol of the triple I, or join Jihad's ranks instead, essentially. This part is removed from the anime, which is whatever, since once everyone finds out about the irregular Bomb, Ren can't even ask Bomb to join, so. But the fact that Ren thinks highly of Bomb is somewhat important. We also miss a lot of parts where Ren praises Yu Han-song about what Yu Han-song was doing, because Yu Han-song rejected a high ranker position to come all the way down to the second floor. Chapter 55 starts with Han Sang-yu versus Ren and ends with Kun saying his plan was perfect. This chapter was all about Kun's plan, which is a little bit, and it has a little bit of Ren and Han Sang-yu. The eyes popping of Ren look freaking scary. I'm excited for that final test. I really hope, I'm excited. I really liked Han Sang-yu's line about finding out in the webtoon, because I think it sounds more threatening when he says that I always know what happens on my floor. But I like the little clarification that Yuga, like the real Yuga, does come to things 5 minutes early. I noticed more in the anime, but the anima that Ren controls has a very similar color palette to Ren's fur, with the blue eyes, the white and yellow spots. I wanted Ren to say the genius wave controller because, I mean, it would have thrown people off that Han Sang-yu could also control animas. And we'll come back to this fight when we talk about it in chapter 56. Chapter 56 starts with Kun's conversation with Leroro and ends with Han Sang-yu leaving to tell the results. So let's talk about the flashback of Kun's plan at the beginning of this episode. Kun knew well that only 2 wave controllers can pass. Loro is talented enough to get 1 seat guaranteed. Out of the remaining, we have Bomb, Gray, and Hwoarang at the same level. I think that we would have been, it would have been a little cooler to see the vending machine scene in the webtoon over Hwoarang just chilling near Kun's lighthouse in the anime, because it adds a little bit more humor there, but both scenes make the same point though. Ho is the real threat. However, the anime just throws that at you, while the webtoon, Hwoarang tells us the power and presence that Bomb has, and that everyone, even Hwoarang, is envious of that power, and that Ho is the bigger threat because of how desperate he is. I don't think this was conveyed as well in like the 10 seconds that Kun talked to Hwoarang in the anime. Also, there's no real reasoning behind why Hwoarang is backing out of the competition in the anime. How can Kun follow her advice so blindly when he's been so calculating thus far? It is interesting that we see that it takes money to get into a regulars room. That I feel like that's anime only. We get a little bit of confusion, especially with some of the comments that I got from anime only viewers, because they think that Kun himself planted the note in Ho's room, which is the opposite, because Kun broke in to take a copy with his briefcase/bag. Kun convinced Loro to help with his plan in Team A and gave a hint to Quan to keep his eyes on Ho. From the webtoon, we have the conversation of Kun and Loro that actually starts in chapter 54. Although we don't get any verbal acknowledgement of the records, the music equipment and setup in Leroro's office looks good. We still never see what's inside the note in the anime, but says that, Michelle's light is the reason for Bomb to go up to the tower. If you kill her, Bomb will drop too. So let's look at everything from Kun's plan in the webtoon. Kun bribed Mr. Zoro, or Mr. Fullback, to keep an eye on Ho, and since we don't even get Mr. Fullback to even appear in the scene where Ho takes the note, Mr. Fullback is removed from the anime for flow. We get text from the panel that Kun sneaks into Ho's room to make a copy, and he even tells Rachel everything. In the anime, we don't know that Rachel knew about the entire plan and still gets stabbed. This part actually makes Rachel more noble and caring about Bomb than her crying in the fields or whatever, because Rachel understands that she doesn't want to hurt Bomb and that he will get hurt if Bomb finds out about Ho betraying him. Kun reaches out to Androsi to keep Bomb away from Rachel, and the scene at the beginning of chapter 52 makes more sense. But again, both of these parts were removed. He gets into bed literally with Loru to get help for Team A's performance, and then pretends to be a terrible person in front of Quan, tips Quan off enough to hunt down Ho. On top of that, he justifies all his actions, as regardless of the outcome, it should help Bomb get out. We even get a misleading takeaway in the webtoon about who is actually messing with the test, because we see both Han Sang-yu and Ren in this chapter after Kun says that someone is trying to keep Bomb from climbing the tower. Leroro in the webtoon actually reflects on everything, and it's strange that so many things are off with the 2 13-month ignition weapons, 2 jihads, and 2 irregulars. Anyways, we get the continuation of Han Sang-yu and Ren, but in the anime, it keeps the entire scene together, which I think is fine because it's not that big of a scene to begin with. I think the only reason it was split up in the webtoon itself was to add tension and have people speculate for another week before the fight actually went down. The talk about rumors in the webtoon where Han Sang-yu's anima gobbles up Ren's was a really nice parallel that we lose in the anime, about talking about rumors that look smaller once they are actually exposed. I like the little smirk of the furball animated and the cool animation for Ren's anima, even after getting destroyed, because it has some tears from its chopped off head. Just makes me realize that the studio is really capable of making some amazing animations and fight scenes. We just don't see it all the time. I'm glad that the anime actually acknowledged that Ren is a ranker, even though it makes, you can justify that someone who's going up against Han Sang-yu should at least be a ranker level, but at least we got that verbal clarification. This whole reveal about Ren just seems kind of random, because we never actually get any of the teachers interacting like we had before the starts of Team A and Team B's test and hide and seek from the webtoon. Those interactions showed us a little bit about the personality of these characters, and I don't think we even got any names of all the teachers, to be honest, in the anime. We keep getting these water references throughout the chapters, in this episode, so I really thought they would keep the last line from the chapter where Han Sang-yu talks about soon a tsunami will shake up the tower as he cracks the coffee mug because of his excitement. Chapter 57 starts with Han Sang-yu and Leroro's conversation and ends with Kun complaining about the test results. We lose another whole backstory that introduces Fantaminium, I think that's how you pronounce it, Fantaminium, and how he and other irregulars caused a change in the testing of the regulars. It further reinforced Han Sang-yu's stance, or fake stance, of the real purpose is to keep the tower from chaos by weeding out those who pose a threat to the tower's status quo. It's actually interesting how much Han Sang-yu truly agrees with Leroro's stance that it's better to live fighting the waves, but can't really say anything because his plan is already in motion. He doesn't want to ruin that. Instead, in the webtoon, Han Sang-yu actually pushes Leroro just to quit because, well, whether Leroro is here or not, the test will continue uninterrupted. This prompts Leroro to quit at the end of this season, but since we don't have the scene, it'll be a little less impactful when we get to the scene in the actual anime. I still don't understand why we don't get a full panel of all the people that passed. It would take like half a second to just flash the panel up, but whatever. We get some changes of who makes it to the final test. For the fishermen, we have Androsi, Anak, Balrog, and Didi Kanko in the anime, while the webtoon had Androsi, Cheong, Hong, Balrog, and Anak. So the webtoon, we had Hong actually go up the tower with Nere, but now we don't have the potential reunion of the 7 swords from the hometown in the anime. In the anime, the spear bearers are past were Rock Ghost, Pericle, and Alex Ray. But since Ghost has vanished, she fails. In the webtoon, the people passed are the same, but again, Ghost was probably present, so he didn't disappear. I think this change is fine because, Ghost is an accessory to Rachel, to be honest. His protection duties were over once Bomb and Rachel actually met. In the anime, the scouts were Shibusu, Hats, and Nere, which is the same as the webtoon, except Nere in the anime has the ignition weapon now and cries for her knight that failed. The wave controllers are the same as the webtoon, and that's Bomb and Loru. The only light bearer that passed in the anime is Kun, while the webtoon had Kun and Levin, but as we know, Levin didn't pass the pretest Shinso Wall by Leroro in the anime. They changed the conditions for Merch to pass in the webtoon to pass. In the webtoon, it was he had to make it off the platform, and in the anime, it was that he has to survive for 1 minute. The conditions don't really matter, because in the end, Merch fails. I did like the little animations of Shinso destroying this body though. Chapter 58 starts with Kun's dissatisfaction and ends with Bomb talking about Han Sang-yu. I like that they actually drag Merch off the platform in the anime. I also really like the shot of Leroro in a different position against the window because he's been tied to looking out the window and wondering in the previous episodes. I also like the expression change from Leroro when Kun finds a plausible lie about knowing about the administrator's test. And then we actually get Rock that reinforces that, these tests are easy. We can handle it, which was cool. We have this kind of a anime only scene where Bomb and Han Sang-yu talk before Bomb actually sees the admin. In the same room that we see in the anime, or the same room that we see in the webtoon where Bomb comes out afterward. We get this clear shot of the painting that looks pretty similar to the FUG Slayers. It's crazy that I've never noticed it in the webtoon. Granted, we never saw the full picture in the webtoon. Technically, Michelle Light or Rachel is an irregular, so she should be able to go further in the anime. It's not just Bomb, but that's a small takeaway. We also don't get the talk afterwards with Han Sang-yu because, we'll probably get that next episode since this episode ends with Bomb meeting the admin again for the second time. And then we cut back to the main group discussing. We still get a line of Rock saying, a regular? Does that taste good? I'm glad they added that. Instead of Han Sang-yu giving the options, we have Leroro here in the anime. Take the test with Bomb and get a shorter route to clearing the floor, but you'll be branded as those who helped an irregular up the tower. Although I don't hate the change that they made here at the end, where everyone just sees through the bad acting. The webtoon gives Rock this amazing speech about turtles and shows Rock's intuition to pick up on Kun's schemes. In the webtoon, we get the true meaning of turtles and why he calls everyone that, because they're nothing more than a turtle. Someone who cowers in fear inside their shell. Rock doesn't care about the consequences. But the anime kind of cuts this speech short and gets everyone to just accept Bomb. I thought the cliffhanger at the end was pretty good. It was perfect. People are going crazy as they think about Bomb. They think that Bomb has to solo the admin, so this much speculation here, which is amazing. A lot of character moments were cut out for sure, but in the end, I enjoyed the episode a lot. We got proper send-offs to Serena and Ho, the cliffhanger was awesome, and Drunk Regulars was great. Again, I want to point out, I don't hate the choices that the directors made for this episode because, again, it's really hard to choose what is taken out and what needs to be added to make the story whole. Just my thoughts on the episode. That's all for the video. If you get a chance, subscribe to get access to these reviews every week. My social media can be found by searching Inspirational on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch. Shout out to my designer. You can find his work on Instagram at @JatinB_photography. Shout out to my editor. You can find him on Twitter at YoungObesity. See you all next time.